If you told me that in the year 2025 we'd be getting a soft reboot turned mildly confusing continuation to a series that was hailed as Marvel's masterpiece, I'd probably laugh in your face, and then shake with pure agony as I wonder how Marvel will f it up. And can you even blame me for thinking that? Because have you seen what Marvel's put out in the past 3 years? Keep in mind, less than half of this is actually decent, so color me surprised when by the end of the show it turns out to be just as good as It's Everyday Bro. Oh no wait, no, that song's actually good. But who knows, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Daredevil Born Again continues the tradition of being Marvel's magnum opus and ends up bringing forth a new golden age of the MCU, unlike this one. Now even though I am biased against the MCU right now, I promise you that won't affect my judgment of the show, as I'm mostly judging it based on its own merit. So let's find out if Born Again actually fills the shoes of its predecessor and builds the same reputation that the original had. But first, since we're gonna look at the new show with such critical eyes, I think it's fair that I give my review of the original thing first. The original show, not the movie. That one deserves its own video. The original show, Marvel's Daredevil, is Marvel's masterpiece. And while there isn't much that I can say that hasn't already been said, there are a few points that don't get talked about enough. One of them being that Daredevil uses every single character in the show to the fullest, and none of them feel like they aren't used enough or appear too much, which is actually a lot harder to do than you think, since you have to write a show that only has a set runtime each episode, and you only get 13 of those. Another thing I love about this show is that it takes the same concepts Batman and his villains have but actually uses them correctly. That concept being that each villain in Daredevil represents a single component of Matt's character. Kingpin obviously represents Matt's view of saving New York, albeit in a very twisted distortion of that view. Bullseye represents Matt's unbridled rage, and Vladimir represents Matt's determination and immaturity. Hell, even the small-time crook Turk Barrett represents Matt's way of manipulating people and tricking them to get what he wants. The last thing I love about the show is the sheer cinematography, because whenever I look at this show and it gives me a shot like this, it almost makes me forget that I get to watch a brain-rot advertisement in less than 50 seconds. Granted, I wish they would do more one-take styled scenes like a comic book, but with how difficult those are to pull off, I don't blame them. Overall, the show deserves the praise it gets, and I swear to God if the reboot sucks, I'm crashing out. Speaking of which, let's talk about it right now. But before that, I ought to tell you that this video is sponsored by my Patreon, which is only $3 by the way, and with it you get work in progress updates, a full video archive for all my videos, your name gets featured in the credits at the end of each video, and you get 2-minute early access to all my videos the day before they come out. Oh what, you're telling me that's not good enough? Well how about this? You also get access to exclusive videos that won't be released to the public. Kind of like the SpongeBob Lost episode if it were locked behind a paywall. Now hold up, even though that sounds bad, the video itself is going to be very high quality, very well produced, and I reckon you'll feel like you're in a movie theater when watching it. So go to the third link down below and subscribe to my Patreon for some love and appreciation. Daredevil Born Again episodes 1 and 2 take a dramatic start and end on a very, very wild note. But let's start out with episode 1. Shortly after we are reintroduced to Murdock, Nelson, and Paige, Nelson is murdered by Bullseye and Paige moves to San Francisco after a time skip. Oh wait, I almost forgot. We also get Spider-Man graphics for the new Daredevil action scenes, and a pretty good hallway fight scene between Bullseye and Daredevil. Right off the bat, the show takes a massive leap, killing off one of the most pivotal characters for the original show and writing out the other one. I understand that this show is meant to be a soft reboot and not a season 4, but still, you dedicate one episode to Foggy's death and Karen's departure instead of letting Matt feel the weight of this action and trauma for 2 episodes, something that would have happened in the original show I might add, but I digress, as we now get a pretty basic opening sequence, something that would definitely rival The Defenders, and a pretty well done title card. Obviously since the show needs an antagonist, we get to see Kingpin, who gets all dressed up just to crash the quote-unquote business meeting of his wife Vanessa. We are introduced to Ben Urich's niece, the BB Report, a character that hopefully won't meet the same fate as her uncle. Also, did I forget to mention that Matt crossed the line and pushed Bullseye off the roof? Yeah, turns out Foggy actually dying was the last straw and Matt decided to throw his character development from season 3 away. I know, but I'm not the only one that notices a pattern here, right? Anyways, sometime after Karen leaves for San Francisco, Matt gives up being Daredevil and opens up a new firm with Kirsten McDuff, the same lady Foggy rizzed up minutes before his passing. May he rest in peace. Speaking of Riz, McDuff, who I am now going to call Kirsten because her last name sucks, picked up on her partner being depressed and decided to get him a hooker. So Matt ended up actually meeting a therapist because of Kirsten's meddling, and the two hit it off, unsurprisingly. And Fisk goes over his agenda with his team, who consists of the new Wesley, Division 1 Glazer, and trust me, you'll know why I call him that in the episode, and a woman that most politicians would love to have on their team. We learn that the public is divided on Fisk, just like, nope, not doing it. You came to watch superheroes and not politics, so I'm gonna stick to that. But still, the political reference is not very subtle. Matt ends up asking Fisk out on a date, and the two have a chat, reminiscing about their days being the living crap out of each other. And it looks like the show will be adapting the superhero band plot from the comics. And if they do that, I wonder if it's gonna be a thing for the bigger MCU, or just a side quest for the show. Because in all honesty, it feels like they're gonna hype up a superhero band in episode 4, using White Tiger as an example, and later have it resolved by episode 7. But that's just me personally. Getting back to the recap, Trump's administration, Wilson's administration, wins the election after Matt's dinner date with the therapist. Wilson tells Vanessa that he knows about her son and assures her that he won't be harmed, while Matt hears the cries of civilians in the background. The two then have a pretty cool stare down and the episode ends. Personally, I think this episode was not nearly as strong as the pilot for the original show, given the very botched level of writing for the side characters and even the main character in certain parts. But you know what? Let me just watch episode 2 and see if my mind changes. Yeah, I take back what I said. This show already has a pretty rough start. Episode 2 was moderately decent, all things considered. It started with Wilson delivering a live speech and a rescue turned fist fight that leads into a casualty. Wait, what was that last part? We then get Fisk yapping about a desk for 20 seconds, him learning that his wife doesn't want to be a part of his agenda, and he actually does something for the people in New York City. With Matt's storyline, we see him overhear corruption taking place, and he decides to represent that same guy from earlier, whose name is Hector. The reason Matt wants to defend him is because apparently he's innocent. Or not. See, the thing is, this episode tries to do the same thing that episode 1 of the original show already did, making an innocent character be put on trial even though they didn't do the crime, but have that same innocent character not tell the full truth. And this plotline was done so much better in the original. For one, it had the air of suspense to it. We as the audience didn't know what led up to Karen holding that knife, and it was only after she told her story that we had a decent picture of it. But more than halfway through the episode, Matt figures out that Karen lied about one thing, that being she kept the file which got her in this mess to begin with, and he only figured this out because Foggy said this.
She may not be guilty, Matt, but that doesn't mean Miss Page is telling the truth.
Keep in mind, Matt knew she was innocent via her heartbeat, but was willing to admit that she could also be lying about a major detail, which leads me to 2. This story showed Matt's intelligence and strategic use of his powers, Foggy's discernment for innocent people and honest people, and Karen's recklessness for keeping the very file that got her framed and almost killed. And in case you didn't notice, none of this is in the second episode. The closest we get to this is the heartbeat scene where Matt figures out that Hector is innocent and lying about certain things. So out of all the pros I mentioned earlier for the original, only one of them actually applies to Born Again. Oh, by the way, Hector is White Tiger, a vigilante who appeared as a cameo in the beginning of episode 1. A private investigator figured it out. Don't worry, new rock stars will explain that to you, because I want to put more attention on the fact that the case for Hector is dismissed at first because it's the word of a vigilante versus an officer, and later it's decided that the White Tiger persona won't be mentioned in court because he wasn't wearing the suit at the time. I'm pretty sure it would have been stated in court anyways, but that's just me. Back to Wilson Fisk. He threatens the police commissioner to get the force in line and do their jobs, and also decides to use the BB report's immaturity against her. While we're on the topic of the BB report, she mentions that the vigilantes have been picking up the slack for the lack of police officers since a lot of them are retiring in protest of Mayor Fisk, which I actually like, because this is a very good detail for the viewer if they actually pay attention to the show that they're watching, and not just doing this, since it actually gives you an idea as to why guys like White Tiger are even out there in the first place. From a writing perspective, I can definitely respect someone who adds layers to their story, instead of just adding fluff that doesn't matter. And while we're on the compliment train, I do like the short segments of the citizens in New York voicing their opinion. My only gripe is that they often feel like intermissions and not a part of the actual episode. So I think a good C-plot focusing on the civilians of New York through the perspective of Matt and the BB report would do just fine, seeing as how Karen got along with Ben so well. Hell, you could even make the motivation be that BB wants to follow in Ben's footsteps and puts 2 and 2 together that Matt is DareDevil or something like that. Matt gives a stern scolding to White Tiger, and then later follows a corrupt cop who later beats him. Matt uses his hearing to figure out the location of the key witness that Hector rescued in the altercation, the rescued in question being Nikki, the key witness that can give Matt and Hector a leg to stand on, as the police all throughout the episode try to spin the story to make Hector out to be the bad guy. And due to Nikki's existence threatening this narrative, the corrupt cops find and try to kill him, but Matt gets to him first and sends him off before they can bust down the door. The corrupt cops and Matt then get into a fight that later ends in Matt giving a battle cry similar to Moist Critical after he sees a roach. Jokes aside, Matt brutalizes these cops, and I bet you the battle cry is his animalistic way of saying that he now has to defend what he just did in court as well. Generally, this episode was mildly entertaining, and by the time I finished watching, it felt more like a timid recreation than a chip off the old block of the original. Overall, watching these two episodes made me feel vindicated for having the thumbnail the way it is, as I personally believe this series will be in the same category as the shite we've been getting for the past 3 years, because from the pretty mediocre CGI in certain scenes, to the poorly recycled plot lines, to even the wasted potential of certain characters and plot devices, it all pains me to say that, yup, this show kinda sucks. Granted, I could be wrong, but in all honesty, I've lost all hope for Marvel and what potential this show had since She-Hulk, because whatever level of disappointment I got from Daredevil's appearance in that show, it's probably what I'm gonna get for the next day episodes. Real quick, if y'all enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe so I can flex on the hoes and the haters. Also, follow my socials so that you'll know when I post a new video. And if you really enjoy my content, then consider checking out my Patreon, where I give weekly behind the scene updates, as well as an archive for all my videos. You can also get your name featured on the end credits, as well as early access to the first 2 minutes of all my videos, which also include this one. Oh, and before I forget, you also get access to exclusive videos that are going to be Patreon only. Think of it like the last episode for SpongeBob if it was behind a paywall. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.